Hallelujah. Blessed be the Most High King of the universe, the God of our forefathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We give him praise because he is to be praised at all times. We give him glory because he is the King of the universe. Once again, we are revisiting the previous week's chapter, or Sidra, which is Shofteem. And as we do every week, it will be highlighted that the highlights will come from Nasik, Zurishaddai ben Yehudah, who's been doing it on a weekly basis, just highlighting points that the chapter has to offer, the chapters have to offer. So, Nasik, how are you today?
I'm great, Baruch Hashem. I'm feeling great, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to come back. First of all, I'd like to thank the people for being patient and it takes time to look and see what I have to say. First of all, I give praise to the Supreme Eternal of the universe, God of my forefathers, God of Abraham, CHOKMAH, Yaakov, and due respects to the platform there, the Gaius, which is Chief Prince Jeriel and Chief Uzel, who's MCing this here, and to all my other brothers and sisters, Chief Prince that may be watching, the Marine that's out there, reaching the tongue of my forefathers, Shalom Aleichem, and an early Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom Lakai.
I just want to, before I go into Shofteem as a highlight and review for most, I'd like to revisit one thing I mentioned about the dietary law last week. I had got some, individual feedbacks about the milk, the kalab itself, and when I was specifying that when we was talking about the part where it sees the kid in its mother's milk, and I brought out an example of milk actually derived from decomposed blood, and so I thought most people was familiar with what the process of milk and the uniqueness of it, whereas blood is not permissible for us to inject, and to ingest to eat. Being the life of the flesh, it was just sort of a strange thing to envision that milk also is a life-sustaining force to wean most mammals, as they would call it. People like animals that give suckling, and human beings themselves as being suckling. And what I find even fascinating in that area as well is that milk and honey is described as part of the land, a land that flows with milk and honey. And yet, knowing the process that milk goes through, where once it goes through this process, is permitted for us to ingest. Honey is a product of the bees, but it's not the bees. Where a bee is unclean, but yet the honey itself, which is a product from it, is permitted for us. Some circles might say they don't put the queen's honey, the queen gel herself might be different. But anyway, but in a general statement, the Torah doesn't say whether the queen or not. So but honey itself being produced by a creature that is unclean for us to eat, and yet that is okay for us. And neither one of those goes on the altar, which is found kind of interesting myself. And so now to come back to this week, Sidra. Well, last week's Sidra was the Shofteem, and Shofteem is part of a trilogy. When you look at Re'eh, when you look at Shofteem, and when you look at tomorrow's Sidra, which Kitazeh, when you go out or before you go out, that trilogy has more law, statutes, and judgments within it than any other trilogy of the first 5 books. You know, you run through a bunch of laws, a bunch of statutes, a bunch of judgments and stuff within these 3 trilogies. And it's fascinating that usually Shofteem comes in around during the time of Elul, when you're supposed to be making preparations. And this time it actually came in, basically, the first Shabbat of Elul. What's is even important to note that this is a time of preparation, time we try to get ourselves ready for the great day of Yom Kippur, and which is be held before that, 10 days prior to that, which would be Yom Teruah. But I like to focus on the thing about Shofteem, which is translated as judges. And most of us know that it's been accounted for that is 613 law, statutes, and judgments throughout the first 5 books of Moshe. All right, so, and some even go say 248 positives and 365 negative prohibitions. Some even go further and say that the positives would be similar to the organs of the body, and the negative, the sinews, that was in the main sinews within a human being, but also pretty much a solar year. But that's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on, and this time, just bringing some things out as sort of hopefully I can set up a pretty good platform with this. That when we talk about judges, one of the things is that we all know, and I listened to quite a good teachers last week, which is I should give him a shout out, Maury Ithamar. It was an excellent teaching, and Rabbi Eli Aronoff, and then also one of my proteges, Chief Prince Hezekiah, and everybody did an excellent job in teaching those people that happen to listen to their teachings on those particular Sidras. I know they got a lot of wholesome information, so it makes it a lot easier for me to review on some things. When we look at the judges and officers, let's go back to when the first time we have an idea or a concept of, we know the Creator is the ultimate judge, but the first time we get an idea when men have to implement judges is when Noah and them came off the ark. They had some kind of rule in reference to what they're going to eat. I'm not going to go into it now. I'm just going to point out the chapters just to save time. If we was going Genesis 9 and 4, there were certain rules and regulations, and even about murder. If a man happened to murder another man, that was this is 7. They refer to them as the 7 Noachic laws that Noah had to have when he came off the ark, that the Creator had shared and told him that he had to implement. Now, next time you hear about any kind of judges, pretty much is with Abraham. And what's fascinating is that when it's plea for Sodom and Gomorrah, he defines a quality of a particular judge, and he's talking to and dealing with the Creator of heaven and earth. And he said, "We're not the judge of the whole earth, do justly, far be it for him to slay the innocent with the wicked." So that's in Genesis. For those who want to go back, I just highlight those things there, and which is showing you that it's a natural thing to have some kind of order. The first world was destroyed because of lack of chaos. I mean, for chaos, for lack of order. Right. The lack of order. And, it was so brutal that they talking about the sons of God, seen the daughters of men, and took wives of all who they chosen. They didn't care who she was, who she belonged to, whether she wanted to or not. Strong arm. And it's kind of ironic that when you say the sons of God, and you always think about it, it's 2 times in BINAH Elohim is mentioned in the scriptures, in Genesis and in also in the book of Job, and it's always a bad sign, it's a bad situation coming up out of it. In the book of Job, you know, the place takes place in a heavenly court, and then you have a adversary there, and then here on earth, you got these guys here strong arming and creating havoc where might made right. So, and that is because of the corruption and the injustice that first world was destroyed by the deluge, by the flood. Because it's, and the where it said that of Noah, only he found righteous upon earth. So now we get to after Abraham said that a judge must judge righteously, especially a judge on that level.
Right.
When Lot, the next time you hear about anything about a judge, they charged Lot with the area of sand. When he tried to save those angels that came into Sodom, and he brought them into this house, he said, "This one need to be a judge over us." You know, and where Lot was, he was really by the gate. So sometimes wicked people really hate judgment. Only those people that really striving for righteousness, for any kind of godliness, they will look for a particular judgment. Then we goes on, I'm still focusing on some areas of judges. When in the matter of Sarah, when she found out she was despised by her, her handmaid after she got pregnant, Hagar, and Sarah, was looked at in lower esteem from a handmaid position, and she brought the issue to Abraham to deal with the issue. Abraham, before she asked Abraham to deal with the issue, she said, "My wrong be upon you." So now we have a thing where some people sometimes might try to blame a situation upon them when they initiate the situation. So we're getting different types of areas that judges are going to have to deal with. And Abraham, in that case, in that particular instance, he refused to deal with the issue. He put the issue back in the one's hand who he shouldn't have put it in, which was Sarah. And it shows that sometimes people could be malicious in their judgment, because the angel said that the Lord has seen how Sarai at the name, Sarai afflicted her. So that means that her judgment was a little extreme. Then we're going to move on just a little bit more. And when Moshe, the second day out, he see one Israelite fighting with another Israelite. And he said to the one, why you hit your brother? And what the guy said is that, you need, in other words, in short, you're going to be my judge and executioner.
Mm-hmm.
So Moshe said, surely this thing is known.
That's what he said.
But he seen the one that did wrong, and he tried to address the one that did wrong. Now, one of the things about this particular Sidra, and if you could start from the top, and then I'll pick it up from there.
All right, I got you.
All right.
We're in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 16, verse 18. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Judges and officers shalt thou make thee in all thy gates, which Jehovah thy God giveth thee, tribe by tribe, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment.
Okay, hold it right there. All right. I neglected to give a summary of the Sidra, because I know I'm going to touch on everything in the Sidra, so I'm just going to give it a review highlight for those that didn't have the opportunity to listen to the teachers that spoke last Shabbat and got a chance to, in a busy schedule, to read it. But the whole Sidra of Shofteem deals with the government, judicial system, the king, the priests and the Levites, false prophets, criminal law, law of warfare, laws pertaining to unsolved murder, a cold case. Israel has some cold case files too.
Mm-hmm.
And prohibition against wastefulness, which I'll explain, just touch on briefly. Also, all right. So those are the main highlights in there. Moving on the property of another, another one, another changing a moving man's landmark.
Right.
All right. Offering of peace, and when you get ready to go out to war. Okay. All right. Now, a couple of things I might just touch on briefly, but this one focus on the first line that Chief Uzel just had read. Normally, I mentioned about 613 law, statutes, and judgments within the Torah. They've been enumerated. They've been counted many times. There's only a discrepancy in one or two, which one you count, which one you don't count, but it still wind up with 613 law, statutes, and judgments. But interesting enough, judges and officers is counted as one command. It's not counted as two commands. And you say, well, how is that judges and officers, they're two different jobs. One legislate and the other one enforce. So why would it be counted as one commandment instead of two when there's two sets of people? The judge, of course, can't be the officer, and the officer can't be the judge. But it says you have to have both judges and officers. So they complement one another. How do they complement one another? When a judge gives a verdict, it's just theory. When the sentence is carried out, then it becomes manifested physically. So therefore, you must have the judge given, the rules and regulation, which is a theoretical, which is not physical, which is a spiritual sense of the law.
Right.
And the officer given the physical manifestation of that which the judge has said. Right. So having law without enforcement is no law at all.
Right.
So it took both. So it took both of them. That's why it's counted as one. The theory that the judges come up with, which is legislation, and the officers that enforce it. That way you can act upon what was already spoken upon. One of the things I like to focus on just a little bit more. I got in this area here. It was spoken on, those that might have heard it before, that we had judicial systems that was set up. Well, what makes a qualification? What qualifies for a judge? And the first time you read about a qualification of the judge, you read that in the book of Shemot, the actual qualifications that Yithro, Moshe's father-in-law, had told them. So now, here it is, 40 years later, Moshe still moving and implementing for when they get on the other side of the Jordan to keep on with the judges and officers and the laws in every gate. Now, one of the things is that it talks about concerning these judges is matter of fact, I might have to go there just to read some of the qualifications, Chief, and you can come back to that chapter. Exodus the 18th chapter, 13th verse.
Exodus the 18th chapter, you said?
Yeah, Exodus 18, 13th verse. Just a little bit of that. The qualifications.
We're in the book of Exodus chapter 18, verse 13. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And it came to pass on the morrow that Moshe sat to judge the people, and the people stood about Moshe from the morning until the evening. And when Moshe's father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, what is this thing that thou doest to the people? Why sittest thou thyself alone, and all the people stand about thee from morning unto evening?
I hold just 1 second right there. You notice he asked what he doing to the people? A judge must care about the person he's actually judging.
Right.
Some people act like, we don't have, I don't care what you think about the issue. I don't care about how you see this, see me. But a judge must care not only about the job, but he also got to have a care for the persons that's coming to him for litigation, or the people that stand before him. But just go a little bit further.
It says, Moses' father-in-law said unto him, the thing that thou doest is not good, thou wilt surely wear away, both thou and this people that is with thee. For the thing is too heavy for thee, thou art not able to perform it thyself alone.
All right, keep going.
Hearken now unto my voice, I will give thee counsel, and God be with thee. Be thou for the people before God, and bring thou the causes unto God. And thou shalt teach them the statutes and the laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do.
So that's one quality of a judge. That's the theory. You're telling them, you're teaching them, you're educating them, but you ain't doing it for them.
Right.
And you share the information, but then the officer is supposed to make sure certain things are carried out. But go ahead just a little bit more. I want to get the qualities of the officers.
Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating unjust gain, and place such over them, to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of fifties, and rulers of tens.
Okay, that's good enough right there. That's good. All right, we're going back to the Shofteem, Deuteronomy. All right, one of the things is those qualifications. We read just a while ago that Moshe couldn't get the people with all the qualities that his father-in-law had mentioned, but he came with some good qualities. What's just interesting about Shofteem here is that the book of Judges, the book of Judges, which in Hebrew Shofteem, I think if I recall correctly off the top of my head, or close, it was about 13 judges through that period of time. And those are more like strong arm guys. You say, well, what was their real qualifications? What did they do? A guy killed some people in the field with an ox goad. Shimshon killed some people with a jawbone of an ass. One guy assassinated a foreign king. Gideon did what he did. Yehudah, ran with some guys. And it was during a time where every man did what was right in their own eyesight. You get the judges that you deserve for the time. That's what really happens.
Right.
Because it said these guys judge Israel. When you read their portfolio, look at their resume, you said, this guy was a judge? Shimshon was a judge? Shamgar a judge? Wow. So Yehudah is a judge? What's going on here? How these guys wind up being judges? And what were they judging? And what was the status and the state of the people, the morality of the people at the time? When you read in that particular book, and Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord again.
Right.
So you tend to get the judges, that you call for in your time. So usually, most of the times, if the judges is not that great, it's usually the people don't be that great. But it goes on further in a chapter. If you're with me, Chief.
Yes, I'm with you.
All right, just a little bit more. I'm at 16. Back in Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy 16.
Yes.
Verse 19. It says, thou shalt not wrest judgment, Thou shalt not respect persons, neither shalt thou take a gift, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous.
Hold on right there. Which is interesting here, and talk about a gift, a shokad, you know, it don't just mean, you know, and which is, shokad, the word shokad is always used as a bribe. When it says to pervert the words, you know, of the righteous, you know, blind eyes of the wise, that means that, as one viewpoint is that the individual, when he get a gift, and he's your judge, and he's judging a particular, adjudicating a case, and if he receives something from you, or you did something for him prior to even the event, it could have been even a year ago or something, he will mostly become more of your defense attorney.
Everything is okay.
Instead of adjudicating the case on the issues. And so that's why I said, pervert the words, and blind eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. You notice that it says they never call that judge unrighteous, but some people just can't present their case good. Sometimes you go to court and you lose because they say, well, I didn't have a good enough mouthpiece.
And they can't stream up to
I couldn't present my issues well. I didn't have my evidence over there. So when you look at those areas there,
right,
that
so I told Zach I will do it from tomorrow. I mean,
a judge is supposed to just deal with the issues at hand, not on your past history.
So just give me the ID and all that stuff. And
5 years ago, he was stealing a lot. Then finally, we did a little something with him, and then we didn't have that problem no more.
Right.
But now, this guy's up on a charges of theft. You got to deal with this charge of theft, and you can't use his resume from 5 years or 10 years ago for a theft that he's in the court today. Unlike, the system here today,
speak to them.
They say, okay, you had a history of this, you had a history of that.
So
that's not the issue when it comes to.
Let them know and then hit me back.
Torah.
Let me know what's going on.
You're supposed to
deal with the issue at hand if you're gonna be a righteous judge, and that way everybody either and one of the areas that one of the teachers did spoke on, which I might as well just reiterate, that you had a judge. I mean, we usually have just one judge, except in the society of Israel, you had more than one judge, and the thing about judgment and justice should be available readily. That's why it's in all your gates.
Right.
I'm not going to go into the metaphysics about the 7 gates, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into that part.
Right.
But but one of the areas is that when you look at the judges that's mentioned here in the book, you will have 3 at the minimum that exist. Pretty much. That would be you would be talking about 2 litigants come before a judge. You have a court of 3, and that's how it exists. Technically, got records that it shows that it existed all the way up to maybe a little bit after the destruction of the temple, which was destroyed in 70 CE by the Romans. Before I go any further, I'm just going to bring out the criteria. You had a small, what you call Bet Din. Bet Din is actually, a court of judges. Beit is actually a house of, and then Dean is like a judge, which is a different word that's used for Shofteem for the book of Judges, and a different word that's used here in this here particular Sidra. All right, now they would have 3 judges, and the way it would work, and the reason I'm gonna bring this out too right about now is because I mentioned earlier that it's 613 law, statutes, and judgments that's within the 5 books of Tanakh. Then you have
what those a lot of people follow would be a rabbinic approach, or the sages and stuff like that, as you might want to call them. But basically, they have 7 positive laws that the rabbis, they enacted, and about 1,000 prohibitions. So whereas the Tanakh only has 613 laws, statutes, and judgments, those that might go through what they consider Talmudic or rabbinic stuff, they might have 1,000 prohibitions, but only 7 positive commands that they implemented. Now I'm gonna just give you a couple of examples, then I'm gonna move on. I'm bringing that out just for a point of information, since we're talking about judges and officers and part of our history.
Right.
Because sometimes our book ends at 400 something BCE with Malachi, but yet we still is moving on as a people. All right. Some of the things is just like candle lighting. Some sisters, some sisters light candles on Friday night. So that's a rabbinic edict, a positive edict that they made. Another one is Hanukkah candles. When the menorah on the Hanukkah time, and they light the menorah, that's a rabbinic edict. I'll give you one more too. Bless out the Lord God, King verse, command us the washing of the hands. And 2 ways to wash it: one for when you're having a meal, and one if you enter in a synagogue and stuff like that. Those are rabbinic commands. You won't find those in the Tanakh. But then they have a lot of negative prohibitions that's rabbinical, that people think is in the Tanakh, and they try to extrapolate it from the Tanakh, and they try to base it on the Tanakh. And like I said, season the kids in mother's milk, that's a rabbinic thing when they say they don't eat meat and dairy together. So when we depends on your, and there's a difference between what they consider a halakha law and a mincha, which is a custom. All right, in some circles, we have, every Israelite Knesset has some kind of custom they do. Everyone, and they say, well, my teacher did this, or my leader, my spiritual leader, instructed us to do it this way. All right, but we didn't see it in the book. I give you a custom that we gave in BINAH Zakim, using myself as an example. We say we wear an earring in our ear and put a symbol on it representing who we serve for life.
Right.
We're not even thinking about the Yovel, the Jubilee.
Right.
So it shows that's why we used to say it. That's why we wear an earring in our ear as Israelite, because a servant that wanted to serve his master didn't want to go out for free, and he'd rather serve his master. And they take him to the doorpost of the master's house.
Right.
And they bore a hole in his ear. They didn't say they put anything in it, but bore a hole in his ear, and he would serve him. But basically, if he was serving unto the Yobel. And we ourselves consider ourselves serving the Creator forever. So that's a BINAH Zakim, where I'm from. I
remember
custom.
Growing up hearing that.
Yeah. And so that was our custom.
Right.
And we base it on what we read in the Tanakh. But the Tanakh don't say that. That's what it is. Why you wear earring. But that's what we did. And so when sometimes and I'm not advocating for people to follow one thing or another thing. I'm trying to shed light on different areas, because some people would say, this is, Jewish for, and this is that. But then you got to say, well, where you get your source from. All right. So, and that's what I'm trying to do and that's what most teachers try to, good teachers try to do, is bring you insight,
So a mincha is a tradition, basically a custom that places or different sets of people come up with.
Right. And in some circles, a mincha done long enough without any kind of origin.
Cross reference.
they take that as a halakha law in some circles.
Okay, I get what you're saying.
Because they say we don't know when it started. I give you a one that's in the Tanakh, in the Book of Ruth, when it said that a man, you know, and this time when he want to confirm or relinquish anything, he take off his shoe and hand it to his neighbor.
Right.
And that's concerning the guy who pretty much stayed nameless, that didn't want to marry Ruth, and then Boaz married her.
Right.
And yet you read in this Sidra, when the guy don't want to raise up, seed for that what you're supposed to do.
Right.
All right. So that things change, over time, and we have examples of that. All right. So I just want to bring out a couple more things on this about the judges that I want to speak on. So now you have the smallest bet din is 3. After the smallest bet din, then the next one is 23. And the 3 is mostly for monetary stuff, small things. But when it comes to serious issues, then you got the 23 odd numbers, and then when you get the especially capital or controversy,
7.
which in this said between pleading blood and blood,
Right.
and one of the things this was one of the teachers I had that it's not gonna say this one is for me, that when they deal with the 3, it says you go and that's in this particular Sidra where I extrapolate from. If you come from if you go to the priest, the Levite, or the judges that shall be in those days, which is in this particular Sidra. All right, when it comes to a controversy between blood and plead and plead. All right, so you notice they said the Kohen, the Leviim, and the Shofet, the judge that should be in those days. Now, when we was encamped in the wilderness, what we had the priests in the east area, which near the Holy of Holies, and the Levites surrounded the priests.
Right.
Except for Aaron being at the east and open door. So but pretty much the Levites was the buffer between them and the common people, and then you had the common people. All right. So now you got a representative from every quarter of the community. When you talk about the Kohen, who's supposed to be the most sanctified individual in the nation,
Right.
and the Levites, who's the in between the common guy and the Kohen himself, and then you got the common guy. All have input about justice.
Right.
All have input about legalities. Hence the court of 3, the bet din. Now, when but when it said to go to the court, and when it's come to put people to death on a capital crime or a capital issue, then it said if we couldn't render a decision at the lower court, and you went to the court of 23, which is called the small Sanhedrin. That's the term they use. Sanhedrin basically more of a, I guess part of a Greek word, like a sit down, a seating, or cathedral. And then you go to the great Sanhedrin, or the real Sanhedrin of 71. The 71 is because Moshe, when he couldn't deal with the people, he had his spirit dropped on 70 elders. Actually 72 in all, but 70 was actually selected with him, and he making 71. So the Sanhedrin is based on that. And a capital crime had to be done only and decided only at that spot where the Creator called his name to be to dwell. At at that particular time, that's a matter of law in this particular Sidra. And one of the things that like I said earlier, if you had 2 litigants on a small court, monetary thing, what they would do, and this a matter of a historic record, you won't find it directly in the Tanakh, is that one guy would pick one judge to deal with the case, and the other guy pick another judge and then they both agree on a third judge. Now that's just a historic thing. You won't find that in the Tanakh. That's how where you will get a 3. That's basically pretty much historical, coming down from Mishnah and stuff like that, which is documented in other histories. All right, so they would agree. So I would come with my judge. You come. I agree that this guy could be a judge, and you agree that guy could be a judge. Now, one of the things is that judges, I mentioned earlier in one of my talks, that judges are not elected but selected, which is a difference. Here today in this society here, a guy will be voted in. We don't know what kind of credentials he got. Judges got to be known by the people. All right. So I just wanted to highlight those few little aspects of that particular area there. And let's go on. I want to bring out some other issues on law, judicial system, about witnesses, as it talks about. But 2 or more witnesses, a matter is established. Now, it can be, a matter where you might, just happen to have no witness, and yet it could be a death penalty. And I would like to share an example, because we always say by the mouth of 2 or more witnesses, a matter is established. All right, a damsel in the field, and she said she was raped by this guy. The evidence is that she physically been abused. The judge is going to do the investigation, and now naturally, of course. But you have no other witness. You have her word against his word. But yet, you have her saying this act happened. So now, if he's found guilty, he could be put to death for that crime, because the book gives the woman the upper hand, and that's part of our law. So sometimes when we say 2 or more witnesses establish a matter, in some cases, it be no more witnesses at all. And I just share that example, a damsel out in the field, and they charge the individual for raping her, and said she cried out, but there was none to hear. He said, wow, it's just as simple as that. But that's part of our law. So now, when brothers and sisters like to say, well, I'm gonna go strict by the book, then you gotta say, well, how strict you wanna go literally by the book on everything? Because we're saying 2 witnesses establish a matter, and yet you have no witness in that case. But the woman herself, her word against the accused. Then you got another matter where's no witnesses. The sultan, the woman that's accused of not dealing with, not messing with her husband. She goes through some issues there. She goes through an ordeal, which is the only ordeal in Torah, and yet, if she's found guilty as she go through that ordeal, belly swelled, die rot, she dies a horrible death. But then, if she's not, she winds up with a male son. Those are some of the nuances when we deal with law. So being a judge is not as easy of just being a scholar, but being a judge also is about how well you entreat the Creator to give you the right decision to make concerning somebody else's life. And that's why judging is not really an easy thing. So people that rush to be a judge, then it's pretty much suspect. Why you want to be a judge? Why you want to be a judge? Why do you want to be a judge? But we are told through Moshe that judges and officers we must make. All right, so now let's go with another area. And just one of the good things about talking on Zoom, I don't get too much feedback here right now. But let's look at an area here about the king. I want to talk about the king just for a moment in this Sidra.
Okay.
All right. And you know, because I figured everybody else spoke about the judges pretty much thorough.
Right.
And I'm just going to highlight. I just wanted to share just a few things off the top of my head concerning that. But let's look at before I leave that, I got to go back to the judges a moment. The judges itself, we had the system of the Sanhedrin lasting, like I said, until around 90 CE, Common Era. That's basically on about 20 years after the destruction of the temple. We had that system of judges being in full effect with the Sanhedrin and everything, from basically around from the Babylonian captivity. Now, what is interesting, that we had that system so long. What happened? How did the system die? Well, Rome itself came in and divided and started part of the. Well, first of all, it was between ourselves, bickering about, arguing about issues and judgments and law and stuff like that, and immoderate greatness, no respect for one another. So you had two major. One set of laws too. You had a school. The first time you had the division of schools, which we follow today, which we hear about today. The school of Hillel and the school of Shammah. And ironically, both of them had the same teacher. And then Shammah is much younger than Hillel. But Hillel mostly was from, and I'm talking about Hillel the elder, not Hillel the second, just to be clear. Because Hillel the second is accredited for, but just centuries later, around 400 CE, of the 400 something CE of the Common Era. All right, so Hillel the elder. All right, they had two different schools of thoughts. They had three different areas of Torah that they was had far as concerning ritualistic works that they disagreed on. But the school of Hillel, which is more referred, the Pharisees tend to lean towards more, and pretty much most of the customs and rules that we hear today, we follow that. Those that follow a rabbinic approach, and a lot of indoctrinations come from that particular area there. Whether Israelites know it or not, some of the Israelite practices come from that area there. That the school of Hillel himself had much more students, and it was from Babylon, mostly based in Babylon. The school of Shammah, mostly in Jerusalem. And the difference is that normally, the division, you normally say, well, okay, you follow a majority. When anytime you have an issue or something like that, you go with the majority. Well, the majority was with the school of Hillel. The minority was with the school of Shammah. But Hillel had more like an open enrollment to come to learn different Torah study, because we're supposed to work within the frame of Torah, because that's our ruling guide to our faith and practice, is the Tanakh, the Torah itself. So therefore, Hillel over in Babylon had more of an open enrollment, while Shammah over in Jerusalem didn't have an open enrollment and had more scholarly, and it was harder for you to become a student of Shammah than it was to become a student of Hillel. So therefore, Shammah didn't think, the school of Shammah, the members, the students of it didn't think they had to listen to the school of Hillel, because they didn't think they was equal to them on an intellectual level, and because they had the open enrollment. But they didn't stop there. Then you had other schools coming up with different ideologies and concepts and Torah and debates. So now you had a Kiva school and a whole lot of other schools, Mary school. So you had more division, and the Romans did that, and then they took away the capital punishment crime from the Israelites because they stopped doing the capital crime is way before the temple was destroyed by the Romans, and then they stopped allowing them to exercise certain rulings, period, because they had, like a sort of society within the society. They had to bring all their cases to Rome. That's just in a nutshell, just overland. Let you know that how things split because this court don't agree with that court, this court don't agree with that court.
Right.
And the thing is, with our way of life, once a ruling is reached, it's done. It's never an appeals. And so the thing is that you're supposed to go by, the judges that be in your days. You can't say I'm going to research a judge, Shemuel, but yet say Prophet Zurishaddai is here today. Well, I'm not Shemuel. So if I'm judging a case, I'm doing the best I can, pray to God that judge, righteously, for the judgment is God's. So I'm doing what I can in that. In this particular Sidra, talk about, Sadiq, Sadek, Tiradov. They translate it in most books as justice pursue, but it's actually righteousness pursue. There's only two things that tell you to pursue in the scriptures, and that's one. In his first 5 books, they talk about righteousness, and yet in the Psalms, and I mentioned that before, David talks about pursuing peace. So now I'm gonna go back into the king. That's what I'm going to share that about the different the sects that go on.
Right.
The king, it says he got 3 rules. Now, what makes it said when we come to Moshe said when you go into the land and you say I'm gonna set a king over me, like all the other nations, and let you know that the ultimate judge of who's gonna be the king is the Creator and not you. And that's in line with and the king has certain rules. But before I go there, the king has certain rules. 1, not to multiply horses. 2, not to multiply wives. 3, not to multiply silver and gold. So now, 2, first one, horses. It says, of course, the people go into Egypt. Why? Because somebody got to take care of them. Somebody got to be working for them. And so it ain't so much the thing. He gonna enslave the people to take care of his wild stuff. So the first one, prohibition, is not affecting him directly. It's affecting the people. The next prohibition, multiply wives, it affects him. And in affecting him directly, consequently, it will affect the people. Then the last one, silver and gold, he becomes egotistic. It's about exploitation. It's all about when a person is into gold and silver, and that's all they want, gold and silver, they can never be satisfied. So therefore, he will exploit and reign as a tyrant. And those are prohibitions there.
Right.
One of them I like to speak on is the second one, wives, because that's about every king we read about had more than one wife. And then Solomon went really, 1,000 women, but it seemed as wise as he was, it turned his heart, away from the Creator. So that means that he couldn't even get away from that. So and one of the things about they couldn't have more than one wife directly. The multiplication of wives, some people say you should have only one. All right, but what's really I like to show a dynamic that we know the Kohen is anointed. Kohen Gadol is anointed. The king himself, being anointed is not part of his criteria here. And though some kings was anointed, but that's not a criteria that's listed here in the Tanakh. You know, we know that, you know, Samuel did something with Shaul. We know we did with, you know, Dawi, and then we know Dawi did that with Shlomo. But for the most part, so-and-so, it says so-and-so reigned in his stead. Such and such reigned in his stead. And well, what's the so why is it that the Kohen Gadol, the HaKohen, is anointed and the king is not anointed? You know, as a rule, he can be some, you know, I mean, but you know, but it's not a command for him to be anointed with oil. But it is a command for the Kohen to be anointed with oil, and then talk about olive oil. All right. So now the thing is that with Moshe, he acted as a king and a leader. He was like our spiritual guide, and he also was our civil leader. After him, you had Yehoshua, a spiritual guide and a civil leader. But then Yehoshua still wasn't on the level of the spiritual guide as Moshe, where he had to consult with Eleazar. I mean, you know, for certain things, and stand before him. After that, you had just elders, and then they say, okay, and you had the judges, and then you say, okay, we want a king now. And it's from the time of judges, then they wind up with a king, which the first king was Shaul, something they asked for, which is the root of his name. It means to ask for. Similar to Shemuel's name, which means to ask for. So sometimes you get what you ask for, but the Creator said still that he chose the king, and he said also you got to be one of your own people. You know, it couldn't have been an outsider. You got to be one of your own people, and plus one I would choose. So, you know, that's one area I just want to bring on and dealing with the king, just to get a little bit further along. The last thing I want to talk on today, because I don't want to be too long, is about the when you go out to war. That's the last thing I want to speak on today, pretty much. And one of the things when you go out to war to a people far out from you, and they say what you proclaim peace to a nation of far off.
Right.
All right. Now, one you know one of the things is a question that should come up, that Moshe is saying that a nation of far off you proclaim peace to. Do that apply to Amalek? That should be a question people should ask. And do you say it in the language that they could hear? Because the conquistadors, I hope I pronounced it right. I know you got that Spanish for me. But anyway, the conquistadors that came over for Spain and started conquering, you know, Mexico and South America and all that, they used to get out there and they'd be miles away, maybe a mile or so away from the enemy, and they used to proclaim peace in Spanish, and those natives didn't know Spanish, but they felt that they had to proclaim peace in Spanish, and then they go ahead on and attack. But our law, well, a nation far away from us, you proclaim peace, and so you have wars that you know you have what you call let me see you have optional wars and you have mandatory wars. All right, it was mandatory for us to have a war with those 7 nations.
Right.
You know, and it was mandatory for us not to seek their peace. And so, you know, Moshe wanted to talk about them, but he said a nation far off. Amalek didn't live close by us. He went out his way. All right, so, and the Midianites wasn't really that close by us either. But we had avenge ourselves of the Midianites. So that's a question I would leave, because that's a question of debate. Open. Do you when do you proclaim peace to a people before you go to war with them? Because you're already left out when you go
Right.
out to war. So you're already left out. So you know you're not close. You know.
So you saying you might send emissaries, like, and just using like the movie 300, where they send emissaries out. It's understood that you come in as diplomats and that nothing should happen to them, but basically to say,
Yeah, but see, this is our law. We can't deal with the outside of people, because most of them, most people may not do that, for power of strength. Because we're going out to war, and they don't say why we go out to war, but we're going out to war.
Okay.
And it says that when we go out to war, that we must proclaim peace. And if they accept our terms of peace, then we make them tributaries.
Okay.
All right. So now here's the question: when do we do it, and when we don't do it? We had only one example where the 7 nations, we weren't supposed to do that with that and seek their peace.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we was told to vex the Midianites, and avenge ourselves of them. But it never said, you couldn't say, well, we're going to proclaim peace before we, and then and put terms on them. And also the Amalekites. So that's the question, and that's the dilemma. And that's a thing of a discussion, for further discussion in those areas there. And then when they talk about the guys, the priests, that that you're going against the war, that the Creator going to save you. But the most influential guy, now I'm saying the guy that planted a vineyard ain't growing overnight. Guy to have built a house and not dedicated. That's somewhat understanding. Taking a new wife, all right, that could be understandable too. But the last guy they come to is those that's faint-hearted. And then we look in the book of the Shofteem with Gideon, and when they had so many thousand guys, I think 23,000, something like that. And when they say all those are faint-hearted go home, and about 10,000 or so left.
Right.
So we know automatically that what is showing there, a man might be afraid to go to war because of his sins, not because he's scared to fight. He figured in the fight, the Creator will execute judgment upon him. And there's a lot of things here. Now, the last thing I like to talk about in battles, they talk about the cold case file. I didn't want to leave that out. Cold case file, where the guy's found dead, in the field and measured to the nearest city. And you notice that once the elders take an oath and everything, like they break off the neck of a heifer, which is a cow, and the elders take an oath, and everything, and saying that we had, we're not responsible for this innocent blood. Now, they're not responsible, but you notice that the way, if we read the Sidra really close, warfare, grudges, captives, women, a son that could be stiff-necked, rebellious, could come from a relationship like that.
Right.
It teaches a whole nother lesson, which I didn't want to get into. I'll leave that for people that's going to teach the whole Sidra. But the order of things, when you read in Shofteem, and you get down to warfare and about seeing amongst the captives and stuff of that nature, and different bodies laying out there, all that is like a stair-stepping thing going down, 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 down.
Right.
And I just want to point that out, and I'll lay that for people that go to their various congregations to discuss those points more, because the descending order of things and events that happen will say, oh, well, we at war. Nobody gonna know I had to kill this guy. I killed this dude. Could have been an enemy.
Right.
Oh, the captive. I mean, you married this foreign woman that you done wiped off everybody in the family. Now you have a child by her.
And it's the firstborn son.
And he's glutton and a drunkard.
Yeah.
You know. And
Or he might be a firstborn son and you hate her.
it could be a lot of stuff involved.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, the thing is that those are different issues in the book, and as we come into this particular time, now normally they read the 27th Psalm, and that's a custom. They choose the 27th Psalm. But I just want to get one little verse out of it if I could find it right quick. 27. Let me use this book here.
Man, you got a new color turban I never seen before.
I got a bunch of it. I had this here since I got back from overseas, man.
Oh,
I just don't get a chance.
That's a nice color one right there.
Thanks. But I got a bunch of. I picked up quite a few over there. Let's see, Psalms. Psalms 27. I want to get the verse so that that's what I would close with, that verse. Okay, the 4th verse of 27th Psalm. All right, I'll read this here. One thing have I asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. So, David is saying that that's one thing he would ask if he had to ask one thing. Solomon was asked that same question. You know, what would you want? And Solomon let you know that he was taught by his father. But he asked for a wise and understanding heart to judge such a wise and understanding people. You know? But David said, one thing I will ask of the Lord, and that I will seek. In other words, I'm not just even asking, I'm trying to get it myself. I'm moving towards it.
Right.
And that's what's important. So what we're trying to do ourselves at a particular time is that we can always dwell in, you know, in the house of the Creator, you know, or in His presence. You know, if you're in His presence, it's just as good as being in the house. You know, and that's what we're supposed to be drawing closer to as we come through this particular time. The Haftorahs are for these particular Sidros. Last with the Shofteem, that was the 4th Haftorah of comfort, and there's 7 of them. You had 3 prior to that, which is admonishment, 3 Haftorahs of admonishment. Now, normally the Haftorah has something to do with the Sidra, but these Haftorahs leading up to the 7th one, which the 5th one will be tomorrow, that they read, it has more about us being saved, getting our strength, the Creator leaving us out, so be able to repent. And like the rabbi pretty much say in Teshuvah, you know, the word itself means to answer, but also means to turn around and give it accountants.
Right.
And about our Teshuvah becomes a master of everything. So I hope you got something out of what I said. And I didn't mean to be that long today, but these are pretty long sidros.
No, it was perfect. It was perfect. It was perfect. Once again,
have a good Shabbat.
You too. Torah, once again, Nasik, for your diligence and coming on every week. I know that this is near and dear to you, so I really appreciate it. I don't know how we're gonna do when the days get shorter. Maybe we might have to do it on a Thursday night or something.
You know, well, so you know, I got the strength. You know, I can make the time.
Okay,
you know?
so even if we could continue on when the days get shorter, it just means that, you know, we have longer nights, and we could just do it on the Shabbat if you don't mind. Shabbat night.
I don't mind myself. You know, what I mean, I'm not that from yet.
All right.
You know what I mean, but
Hallelujah.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it in progress. You know, do what I gotta do. You know, and one of the things about the shofar, you know, one of the things we get an example. People, you know, normally they blow the shofar every day, and, you know, around some circles. You know, and as we read the psalm, they blow the shofar after that. One of the things is that you're not commanded to blow the shofar, but you definitely commanded to hear the shofar. So in other words, they had the two trumpets that the priest would blow, and only the priest would blow at this particular time. But when it comes to the shofar itself, they take that from Mount Sinai. You know, when they heard the noise of the shofar, then they was able to, you know, make moves. So it's more important, not so much the blowing of the shofar, but listening to the sound of the alarm. So that's what I leave everybody with. And everybody, you know, have a blessed Shabbat.
Blessed be Torah by Nasik. May the Most High God bless you, and
Right.
you enjoy your Shabbat day also. Hey, that storm didn't hit y'all down there, right?
No, matter of fact, it's a good ways from me. Matter of fact, it's still sunny outside now.
Okay.
I talked to Chief Jacord, one of the artists from BINAH King, and he's he live in New Orleans, but it was a little bit further west of him. But they still, you know, got some, you know, a little hit, but not much. Just strong rain, but not much because it was more west of him.
All right then. All right, Nasik. May the Most High God bless you.
All right, same.
Shalom.
All right, shalom.